Okay, am I audible now? Guys, I think I forgot to unmute. ठीक है, चलो अब बताओ. First of all, good afternoon. Secondly, how will you answer this question? I don't want the answer. I want the framework. How will you think? How will you think how to analyze developing states? Yesterday we talked about this. Yesterday we talked about developed and developing states and their changing nature. And today I want you to tell me how will you analyze developing states? What will be the framework for your answer? Quickly. Quickly. How to analyze developing states? You will tell me the answer. Only then I'll start the class. Without that, I'll not start the class. Let me write the next topic. Political parties, pressure groups, and social movements. This is the topic at hand. Political parties, pressure groups, and social movements. Krishna Teja Reddy, Nandini, tell me the answer. As soon as you start, as soon as you tell me, I will start. Otherwise, I will not start. You have to tell me the framework. You can be wrong, I don't have any problem, but I want you to tell me the framework. Political parties, pressure groups, and social movements, the next part of our syllabus. Economy, society, polity. This is not the framework which I discussed with you. Yesterday I told you that when you have to analyze the developing states, you can either take a liberal approach or you can analyze them from the Marxist approach. Within the Marxist approach, you have the relative autonomy approach and you have the instrumentalist approach. In the liberal approach, you have models like soft state. In liberal approach, you have models like political decay. In liberal world, you have models like Riggs prismatic society. So you can use all these frameworks to analyze the developing states. Now it depends on how on what the question exactly is asked. Very good, Nandini. So the liberal viewpoint, this, the Marxist. Then if the question is asking you specifically that you have to compare it from the Marxist perspective, then only this discussion. If the question is only this, then you have to include both the aspects. As simple as that. Okay. The same framework is there in the developed state also. Be clear of the frameworks, content will then automatically come. See, let me tell you, the way, the such an extensive way in which we have done the political theory part is going to help you all here also. So we have covered a lot of things. The base, we have done so many discussions there that all this is nothing but extension of that only. Now let's talk about political parties, pressure groups, social movements. Can I say the study of political parties, pressure groups, and social movements is nothing but group analysis? And the idea that I have to shift from individual to group in my analysis, this is an idea which has come in behavioral approach, whereby we have started doing group based study also. Otherwise we were always talking from the perspective of individual. So we have started talking from the perspective of groups also. And one study which we can quote here is the elitist theory of power or elitist theory of democracy, or the role of caste. Caste is basically a group in politics. That's a group based study. These group based studies, they are a part of behavioral revolution, and there is a lot of work which has been done. And in this work itself, a lot of study has been done on political parties, pressure groups, and social movements, which is the topic for today. Now, there are things which are very, very easy in this topic. For example, if I ask you that how should we go about studying political parties, and I make my discussion or I start my discussion with this, that there is a political party, and this political party, what is the function of this political party? Let's try to understand कि political party क्या हमेशा से exist करती आई हैं. At a very basic level, what is the political party? It is nothing but a group of people who have decided that they want to make policy and they want to contest elections to that effect if there is democratic elections. अगर democratic election नहीं है फिर नहीं कर सकते हो, ठीक है. तो पहली बात, जब हम पार्टीज की बात करते हैं तो सबसे पहली पार्टी कौन सी आई थी, सबसे पहली पार्टी कहाँ आई थी, सबसे पहली पार्टी जब आई उसका काम क्या था. तो जब हम पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज की एवोल्यूशन को स्टडी करते हैं, so here we see that in the evolution of political parties we have the liberal parties which come first. And why liberal parties are coming? Because we have created a minimal state in which we have introduced in some form the right to vote. Okay, सबके लिए नहीं था right to vote जब आया, but कुछ लोगों के लिए था. So after the American independence and later on after the the French Revolution, I'm talking about in case of France, after the Napoleon era, तो धीरे धीरे क्या था, एक डेमोक्रेसी बनाने की कोशिश की गई थी. Some, not the democracy of today, but the democracy of those times, that there will be some people who will be coming and they'll be deciding the policy. So when these people wanted to come together and they wanted to collectively raise their voice such that they are able to form the policy, this is when a political party was formed, which is called as a liberal party. So this liberal party, people will come together, they will contest elections. If they win elections, then they will go and sit in the state where they will make the policy. Okay, so that's how political parties came. Now comes the Marxist school, which says that these liberal parties, they are nothing but bourgeois parties. So in our evolution, they were called as bourgeois parties. And who called this? The Marxists called this. And Lenin, he said that we will have our own party. Karl Marx never said that there is a need for a party. But Lenin later on said that we'll have our own party and that party will be called as a communist party. So the concept of communist party came into being, and the structure, the working of communist party is very different from the structure working of a liberal party. Okay. But yes, historically, that is how we have evolved when it comes to political parties. Communist parties are there. Now, this communist party concept is coming in the 20th century. Whereas this concept of liberal parties, this is primarily a concept of 19th century. Okay. And during the 20th century, what we also saw was that the right to vote was given to a large section of people. And because of this universal adult franchise, a number of people now started impacting politics and a number of people starting creating their own political parties. So Indian National Congress, which started as a certain kind of a group, later on became a political party because they were now, fighting to get more and more relaxations from the British. Give me a minute. So in this situation, what happened, when I have this framework, starting from the liberal world parties, now we are moving towards the communist parties, and now the liberal parties are expanding in their scope because of universal adult franchise. And during the 20th century itself, the national movements in the countries which is going on, this also sees the coming of some kind of parties, depending on British ne kahan par allow kiya, kahan par nahi allow kiya. For example, India, they allowed, and in 1937, Congress won elections also in considerable number of states. So you see, political parties, that's how they are coming up. But the Marxists have always considered political parties as bourgeois parties or bourgeois controlled parties. And in today's world, these parties, they are the primary mechanisms of interest aggregation. You remember interest aggregation, structural functional approach? The task of interest aggregation, as per Gabriel Almond and Powell, will be done in every country. And who will do this task in every country? The task of interest aggregation, the political parties will do this task. So today, what are political parties? Political parties are nothing but mechanisms of interest aggregation. And political parties, the formation of political parties has varied over the past. Sometimes the political parties are based on ideology. And if I look at the history of how things have evolved, so ideological parties are the parties which were primarily important in the past. British parties. Do you know there are two parties in Britain? The two major parties in Britain, Conservative Party or Labour Party. There are two major parties in US, the Republicans and the Democrats. There are many parties in India. Okay, two major parties are the BJP and the Indian National Congress, but otherwise there are other parties which have their own base and which enjoy a certain kind of a legitimacy in India, and people vote a lot for them. We have talked about them, regional political parties. बट अगर मैं यूरोप की बात करूं तो यूरोप में लिबरल पार्टीज आई, यूरोप में सोशलिस्ट पार्टीज आई, यूरोप में कम्युनिस्ट पार्टीज आई. Later on, these parties kept on growing. And in the colonial world, nationalist parties came. So we have in Europe liberal parties, we have in Europe communist parties or socialist parties. We have in the colonies nationalist parties coming up. If you see why a particular party is coming up, liberal parties are coming up because they want to pursue liberal agenda, which is the agenda of the capitalist or the bourgeois class. They want to make policies in which, let's say, the state does not interfere in the economy, laissez-faire state. So they'll create policies, minimalistic state, they'll create very less laws, they will let the private sector, let the market do whatever they want to do. Then the socialist parties will come and they will say, look, what the liberal parties are doing, they are bringing together all the bourgeois and they're getting their votes and they are making laws which benefit them. So the other part of the world, the other part of a particular country, let's say worker है, उनको कहा तुम्हारे हक के लिए कौन बात करेगा, तो कहते हम बात करेंगे, हम अपनी पार्टी बनाएंगे, सोशलिस्ट पार्टी आएगी, कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी आएगी. So when we will come to power, we will make some different set of laws. हम नेशनलाइजेशन कर देंगे सबकी, ठीक है, सबको अधिकार मिलने चाहिए. So they started doing their politics on those lines. In colonies, Indian National Congress is saying, we'll fight for the cause of independence, so you all come with me. So nationalist parties are coming up. So if you see, either the parties, they have been ideological in orientation, or the parties have been formed on the basis of presenting opposition to the colonial masters. That's how parties have generally been working. Because of this, what we saw in US, eventually two major parties, they remained. One was the Republicans, which are the conservatives, okay, and we have the Democrats, which are liberal, okay, if we have to make a relative assessment between them. But in case of US, it is generally considered that both these parties, they are largely same in their ideological orientation, but if you have to distinguish them, then they are more conservative as compared to Democrats. So we label them as liberal, we label them as conservatives. In case of UK, we have another set of parties, whereby Conservative Party, Labour Party, this is the party of elites, this is more conservative, whereas Labour Party is the party of masses, and it is obviously more liberal because it would want to bring change. In China, you have only one party system exists there. So when we look at these kinds of frameworks, and we'll have to identify why these frameworks come, ऐसी parties क्यों बनती हैं, किसी कंट्री में कोई पार्टी है, किसी कंट्री में कोई पार्टी है, किसी में दो है, किसी में मल्टीपल है. We'll have to understand all these things. But yes, a brief evolution of parties, political parties, is this. That's how we have seen the growth of political parties. Three kinds of parties we have discussed, okay? Liberal, communist, as well as the nationalist parties. Now, how will they ask you the question? They are going to ask you question about what these political parties do and what party systems emerged in various countries. What is political party doing? It is doing the task of interest aggregation, as simple as that. It is reaching out to different groups of people. It is getting their support, and it is trying to then go into the state and govern by making laws. But you'll say this is only relevant for the liberal world, for the world which practices democracy. What about the world which does not practice democracy? What is the role of parties there? Then comes the analysis of countries like China, Russia, North Korea. How do they govern themselves? What is the role of political parties here? Because as per Gabriel Almond, the function of interest articulation, the function of interest aggregation has to be done. Who will do it? That's a separate thing. The structures may vary, but the functions are same. That is what we did in structural functional approach. So, अब मैं क्या करूं? China, what will happen there? Here then comes the concept of communist parties. That okay, because of communism, the idea has always been a communist party, and then as a result of this, they don't allow any other party to exist, but they try to have things within their own party in such a manner that they are able to run the system. Okay. Again, going back, the structure stability has to be maintained. Okay. People should not be thinking that okay, they can break the law. People should not be revolting all the time. Obviously, we are not saying that exploitation should continue, but at the same time, people should not be revolting all the time, and there should not be such elements which keep on creating chaos. So the system has to remain stable, but how that stability has to come? Within the political party itself, we will create mechanisms that the people say that okay, whatever is happening is fine to us, and there is legitimacy for that. So Communist Party, they will do things in a different fashion as compared to liberal parties. They will also introduce some democratic working within their party, and that's how they will do. And they will not allow opposition party, or they will allow opposition party only in a very insignificant manner. That's how they operate. Now, the study is majorly of Europe and USSR, and later the the decolonized world gets added to all our discussion. So we'll have to constantly go back to Europe. So in Europe, in 19th century and in the early 20th century, these political parties, the political parties to which, let's say, Hitler was a part of a political party, Mussolini was a part of a political party, and later on उन्होंने वही खत्म कर दिया पूरा का पूरा. ठीक है. तो there's a very very famous theme कि the fascism used democracy to destroy democracy at the end of the day. So they used democracy, तो पावर में आ गए, फिर आकर उसको ही खत्म कर दिया. Anyway, तो एक तो ये ब्रीफ एवोल्यूशन है पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज की जो हमें पता होनी चाहिए. Now comes the concept of party system. The concept of party system is how many parties have systemic relevance. How many parties have systemic relevance? Systemic relevance means relevance from the perspective of the entire system. Okay, that is what is the meaning. Not all parties will have the same relevance. For example, in India, let's say Shiv Sena has relevance largely in Maharashtra, or Trinamool Congress has relevance largely in West Bengal, or Shromani Akali Dal has relevance largely in Punjab. But when it comes to Indian National Congress, BJP, they are national parties. They have appeal across India. Similarly, in US, you have many parties, but systemically important parties are only two, which are the Republicans and the Democrats. Similarly, in UK, you have other parties also. The Scottish Nationalist Party is there, but not that important. Majorly, it is the Conservative Party, and secondly, the Labour Party, which is important. So those parties which have systemic relevance, they will tell us the party system. For example, you have two-party system in US and UK. Both. There are two parties which are of systemic relevance. You have multi-party system in India, France, Germany. These are examples of multi-party system. Why? Because multiple parties have systemic relevance. There can be something called as one party system also. Here we will place China. So that's how we have party systems. Does it mean here two-party system that there are no other parties in US and UK? No, it does not mean. But only two parties are important, Republicans and Democrats. Now, here we have to talk about Duverger's rule. Duverger's rule or Duverger's law. Duverger is a political scientist. He has said that if there is a single majoritarian type of electoral system, this is realized by something called as FPTP, first past the post system. India's elections in Lok Sabha, स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली, ये इलेक्शंस कैसे होती हैं? इनके पीछे एक इलेक्टोरल सिस्टम है. उस सिस्टम को बोलते हैं फर्स्ट पास्ट द पोस्ट सिस्टम. There can be another way through which elections can be conducted, that is called as the proportional representation system. You all might be aware that proportional representation is used in case of elections to president, vice president, Rajya Sabha. These elections are done by proportional representation method in India. Now, Duverger says that wherever there is single majoritarian type, you will always have two-party system, and wherever proportional representation is adopted, there you will have multi-party system. That's how Duverger says you will look at the world and you will find whoever has adopted single majoritarian type or the FPTP system, two-party system has come. And he will give the example of US and UK. How the elections to the lower houses of US and UK conducted. Lower house of US, US Congress. Lower house of UK, House of Commons. How is the election conducted? FPTP. How is the election conducted in India? Lok Sabha elections, again FPTP. He says wherever there is this method deployed, you will have a two-party system. The problem is, the moment we apply this logic to India, the logic fails. Why? Because in India, we have this for Lok Sabha elections. But despite that, we have multi-party system. In India, we cannot say that there are only two parties which are important. Had that been the case, we would not have had coalitions or Gathbandhans in India. But we have, as we all know, Gathbandhan, even after the 2024 general elections also, we have National Democratic Alliance, which is at the end of the day a coalition of many parties. Multi-party system. And in this, obviously, as we all know, that JDU and TDP, they have significance because they help BJP to maintain power. In case of India, we have multiple parties which are systemically important, meaning India is an example of multi-party system. But unfortunately, we don't follow Duverger's rule. This law was created by a political scientist, and this was largely true unless example like India is given. So Duverger's law does not work, but Duverger's law allows us to understand why in a particular country only two parties are relevant, why in a particular country more parties are relevant. The moment you go for FPTP system, first past the post system, here generally what happens is that the number of players, they get consolidate it into two, because that is when you can take the benefit of the system. If you remain fragmented, you will never be able to win the seat. If you have to win the seat, then what you need to do, two, three players may have to come together. And that is why eventually what will happen, there is going to be one strong player and there is going to be one opposition to that. Sometimes they will win, sometimes they will win. This will keep on happening. This is because of the system itself. First past the post system forces the candidates, the parties to consolidate along two, let's say, two corners. And then it is a two-cornered fight. But wherever you will have proportional representation, what happens in proportional representation is the seat share is proportional to the vote share. And here you can have your own systems. You can have multiple parties. Multiple parties will get some votes. According to the votes, they will win seats and they will go and sit in the parliament. And despite not getting a lot of votes, still they will get some seats. That is why they will maintain their power. They will be able to remain systemically important. But for this, you first have to have proportional representation system. Till the time you don't have proportional representation system, the parties who are fighting elections, they will not be able to get seat. And if they don't get seat, they might not conduct next year, or they might not conduct next to next year. So till when a political party will keep on fighting, political party has to do what? It has to go and sit and make policy. But for that, they have to win the elections. And they can only win the elections if in a FPTP system, the two corners happen, or if in a proportional representation, they need not anyone else. They can go by themselves and still they can get some votes and they will get some seats and they will be in the power and they will be able to affect policy. So that is why he says, whenever proportional representation is introduced in a country, now your next question should be, how do we decide which system do we want to have? It is absolutely the discretion of the country. We adopted FPTP system because it was easy. Is FPTP system good? Not necessarily. There are a lot of flaws in that system, but we still adopted it because it was easy. Deliberate choice made by us while we were framing the constitution. So countries will adopt systems which they find is convenient, or if whatever be the circumstances in their country, they'll adopt a system. These are the two systems available. You can adopt this system, you can adopt this system. Generally, the diverse countries, they adopt this system because it allows a lot of people to get representation. And that is why, because of diversity, you get multi-party system or number of parties which are significant. If you don't have diversity, then you may adopt this, and generally the two-party system will emerge. If you look at examples of US and UK, initially they were not societies which were diverse. They have only started becoming diverse in the last 50-70 odd years. So they adopted that system. It led to the creation of two-party system. It is continuing there. We, on the other hand side, are a unique example. First of all, we never adopted this system. We did not adopt this system because it is a tricky system. It's not so easy. And India in 1947, where people, they don't have much education, they are poor, it will be very difficult for them to understand this system. So what do we say? We say, let's keep it simple. Let's go for FPTP. Now we are not fitting in the framework of Duverger because despite adopting this, we have created something called multi-party system. But make no mistake, this multi-party system in India has emerged only after a certain period of time. Initially, what was there in India? Initially, we had a very unique system in India, which we have done earlier, that from 1952 to 1967, we have a one-party dominant system. We have a one-party dominant system. Then, if you remember, this was the phase of fragmentation, whereby the regional political parties, they are coming. Regional political parties, they are coming. And then we see the coalition culture, in which I can say the multi-party system came. By this time, the multi-party system in India came. Now we are debating whether after 2014 till the present times, have we gone back to one party dominant system, and this time the dominant party being the BJP? Have we gone back to that system, or the multi-party system is continuing in India? There will be a difference of opinion. No doubt there are multiple political parties in India, but the fact that BJP is the major political party which has emerged, and others are there aligning around BJP. So are we going back to something like the one party dominant system? 2014, 2019, these elections have shown that we are going there, but 2024 elections have again put a question mark on the one party dominant system, because the vote share of BJP, the seat shares of BJP, that came down, and BJP started losing in uh, states also. Although the recent elections of Maharashtra, Haryana, and Bihar, they show that probably this is the right way of identifying, but still we'll have to look at other places. We'll have to understand the elections of other places like West Bengal, like Kerala, and then we'll be able to make more assessments. But yeah, major viewpoint, or the major scholars, they are tilted towards one party dominant system. So this is how we have grown, and down the line either this is going to exist or this is going to exist. Okay, and now at this point of time, any doubts at this point of time, please feel free to ask me. Okay, if not, then I'll take the discussion forward. Now, we have discussed about party system, which tells me, which basically signifies how many parties are systemically relevant. And I told you that there are these three frameworks: two-party system, multi-party system, one-party system. And another framework is the one-party dominant system, okay, which was used for India earlier and is being used for India again. So I'll write it here. One question which can come is, what is the difference between one-party system and one-party dominant system? The difference is, here there is no opposition. Okay, here the opposition exists but is irrelevant. Okay, so that's the difference. India has seen this also. India has seen this also. These are the four broad ways in which we define party system across the world, not only in our part of the world, but across the world. In the Western world, you will find in countries like US, UK, even in Canada, two-party systems. But in Europe, you will find largely multi-party systems exist. Example, Germany, France, Switzerland also. And you come to the eastern part of the world, West Asia, no need to talk, because they are all these authoritarian regimes. And if we talk about countries like India, we have this at one point of time, this at one point of time. If we talk about countries like Japan, they also have two-party systems. If I talk about Australia, largely two-party system here also. So in case of Africa, South Africa especially, South Africa has also seen this one-party dominant system, because the party which was fighting against the Britishers when South Africa got independent, they were the most dominant party, the African National Congress. And Africa has also seen this. Okay, but yeah, that's the broad framework which exists in the world, the major players. And you can be asked a question around explanation of the party systems, and then you will have to relate it to Duverger's law, that as per Duverger's law, either a two-party system will emerge or a multi-party system will emerge. And this analysis is only for the democratic world, because this one-party system, this does not exist in the Western world or the democratic world. It is a feature of the communist world or the socialist world. And this is a unique feature which has come up in countries like India and South Africa. And this also is not a part of Duverger's as such classification. Duverger's law. Duverger's law does not talk about one party dominant system. It only talks about these two. India defies the Duverger law. So we'll use Duverger's law to explain the relationship between electoral system and party system. This is the electoral system, and electoral system impacts party system. I'll write it here. Electoral system impacts party system. Okay, Maurice Duverger is a very, very important thinker, political scientist who has done a lot of studies under the behavioral approach. Okay, so his classification is widely accepted classification, and this helps us understand things. But India defies Duverger's law. Okay, one is this. And then what next? So after having discussed the party system, 4 party systems given by the 4 kind of party systems and the Duverger law we have understood. Now we have also understood the functions of political parties, interest aggregation. Now comes the next part of comparison between the political parties of West and the political parties of East. And we'll call it under the broad subhead of party system in Western and non-Western world. So party system in Western world. This is a little different from non-Western world, simply because of the reason that the way in which it has emerged is different. How did party system in the Western world emerge? It emerged as a reaction to the new system which came into being. Look, from the medieval times to the modern times, how has political system changed in Europe? There used to be these authoritarian regimes. There used to be this this monarchs who would centralize all power. So the monarch, the king, has divine authority, has divine power, and using that, the governance was done. From that, we are saying, now you go and we will create a state, and we will tell the state what you can do. Remember John Locke? So the minimal state is created. Now the state has come. Now people are going to fight amongst themselves as to who will go sit and make policies. So when they have to do so, what will you do? You will come up with something called political parties. So that's how political parties came in the Western world. So the entire Europe political parties are coming because the democracy is coming and the minimal state is coming. Now let me take you to the communist world. So the Soviet part and the China part. Why is political party coming? Lenin has said that we need a body which will inject the consciousness. The consciousness in workers is not coming that they are getting exploited. So what we'll do? We'll inject this consciousness. How will inject this consciousness? We will create a political party. So the political party has come up to inject consciousness into the worker. And initially, as per Lenin, these parties, they have to be secret societies. It was later on when the dictatorship of proletariat will come, they will become important and they have to wither away later on. So as per the ideology, the political parties in the communist world, they are coming up. Now the third component will come in the colonial world, which is where the non-Western world will come into picture. Or I can place in the non-Western world Communist Party also and the parties in the colonies also. दोनों को यहाँ पर डाल सकता हूँ. Now tell me how political parties came up in India. The first political party to come up in India at the national level is the Indian National Congress. And the Indian National Congress is basically a party which is to fight for more and more autonomy from the Britishers. Later on, freedom struggle is done by under the leadership of Congress. Okay, as per the dominant viewpoint. Okay, you can contest. You can say no, sir. Indian National Congress was not the only leader. We can debate on that. That's a separate topic. But for the sake of argument, as of now, we are saying that Indian National Congress, a nationalist party, is coming up. My point to tell you here is how the party is coming up. There the party is coming up because minimal state is coming. There the party is coming up because consciousness has to be injected. How the party is coming up in colonies? Because they have to either get relaxations from the colonial masters or they have to fight the colonial masters. So that is why they are coming up. Later on, BJP, how does it come up? It is coming up because it wants to take forward the cause of Hindus, supposedly. So it's a party which is fighting for the cause of Hindus. Okay, we don't have problem. I'm not passing any value judgment कि ये गलत है या सही है, but आई कैसे पार्टी? For example, we have done caste based parties आ रही है. क्यों आ रही है? To take forward the agenda of their caste. Not a problem. That's democracy for us. Obviously, it will impact the nationalistic project, but yes, part of democracy. Now you tell me the manner in which the party is coming up, the circumstances in which the party is coming up is very different in the non-Western world. The party which is coming up in case of Indian National Congress, it is fighting the British, and in fighting the British, it is also violating laws. So Gandhi is violating laws also, civil disobedience movement. So the result of this is the kind of parties which are coming up in India, they may even go to the extent of violating the law, but this can never happen in the Western world because there the idea of rule of law and the base and the very creation of the political parties is very different. So let me take you back to the 19th century Europe and even America. Why the party is coming? Because the basic idea is the minimal state has to be created. That minimal state should make minimum laws so that we can carry out with our own economic functions. हमको अपना धंधा करना है, बिजनेस करना है, स्टेट में जाकर मिनिमल से लॉ बनाने हैं. तो क्या करते हैं? जाते हैं, बनाते हैं, and everybody is okay with this. So everybody is agreeing to the law made. So you will see those parties, they abide by the law. In non-Western world, they may not even abide by the law. Political party ही law तोड़ देती है. जिसको फाइनली जाके स्टेट में बैठकर लॉ बनाना है, वो खुद ही लॉ नहीं मान रही है कई बार. Why? Because the genesis is very different. The way the entire party has come up, the circumstances are very different. डिफरेंस हो गया. वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड की पार्टीज ने अपना सिस्टम अच्छे से बना लिया है, प्रोसीजर बना लिए हैं, किस तरीके से क्या करना है वो क्लियरली बना दिया है, रूल के अकॉर्डिंग सब चलते हैं. बट इफ यू लुक एट पार्टीज इन इंडिया, यू विल फाइंड पार्टीज revolving around personalities. Indian National Congress revolved around Nehru and Gandhi. BJP is revolving around Narendra Modi. So there is this personal charismatic aspect which is more important, and इसके कारण एक हाई कमांड कल्चर होता है कि जो ऊपर से आया वही होगा. तो कोई रूल बनाने हैं, कुछ पार्टी को अपने अंदर कैसे फंक्शनिंग करनी है इसका रूल बनाना है, या जैसे ऊपर से आएगा वैसे कर लेंगे. That's the difference. In the Western world, there are clear-cut rules which are made and they are followed by the parties within themselves. But if I take the example of non-Western world and if I include examples from India, we have dynasty-based parties. Indian National Congress के लिए use किया जाता है ये. We have high command culture, again used for Indian National Congress. We have personality-centered parties. Indian National Congress, BJP both. We have lack of democracy in both the parties. ये डेमोक्रेसी आकर इनको एस्टैब्लिश करनी है और अपनी पार्टी के अंदर ही डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है. Because the way India functions is different from the way US functions. The way Indian society functions is different. Political sociology approach. Our society works on nepotism, favoritism, their society works more on merit. ऐसा नहीं है वहां नहीं होता, वहां भी होता है. So the parties, they are giving tickets on caste basis, religion basis, not on merit basis. In Western world, you will get ticket on merit basis also, because the society is going to reward you. If the society is not going to reward you, why should I give you the ticket? Because my game is to get power. I am not in it for the fact, oh, you are a good person, I have to bring you up. No. Can you win? Take the ticket. There, the merit is taken into consideration. That is why the ticket is given on merit basis also. So as the society functions, your political parties will also evolve very differently. And that is the difference in the nature of political parties in the Western world versus the non-Western world. Western world, formal, institutional, rule-based structures. Non-Western world, informal, non-democratic, high command culture, personality or cult-based parties. That's how the parties work here. So there's this difference. And this difference I have only explained with respect to Western and in the non-Western countries like India. But in the non-Western, if I take you to the example of China-like countries, how are they functioning? They also function in an institutionalized, bureaucrat, formal manner, but they are not allowing other parties to exist. They are saying, if you come with something in mind, be a part of the Chinese Communist Party only. Try to bring more people behind yourself, and then you grow within the Chinese Communist Party, and then you can go to the top, which is the Politburo, and there you can have some relevance. That's how we'll do in China. But those parties, let's say if I talk about the Chinese Communist Party, it is also a formal, institutionalized, bureaucratic structure, which sometimes work on merit, sometimes work on nepotism, favoritism. ऐसे ही होता है, हर जगह ऐसे ही होता है, ठीक है. तो मुझे ये डिस्टिंक्शन क्लियर होनी चाहिए कि पार्टीज काम कैसे कैसे करती हैं. इन चाइना you don't have that much diversity, so there is no need for so many parties. In India you have diversity, so different parties will come up and they will talk about the concerns of different people. Caste based politics, caste based parties, religion based politics, parties, language based parties, DMK language based, Tamil Nadu. China, 90% of the China is Han, HAN. जो हो रहा है तो उन्हीं के लिए हो रहा है. मल्टीपल पार्टी क्या करूंगा अगर. So it helps that way. It helps China in governing themselves in that particular fashion. Okay, so this is the brief difference between parties in the Western world versus parties in the non-Western world. Okay, any kind of a doubt, feel free to ask me. Let it be. Notes में दे दूंगा. Now I want to have understand the difference between political parties and pressure groups. Political parties, what is the function which they are doing? Interest aggregation. What is the function which the pressure group is doing? Interest articulation. Interest aggregation versus interest articulation. Now we want to make a distinction between political parties and pressure groups. Look, a political party will sit in state and make policies, whereas a pressure group will only influence or pressurize policy making. They are not going to make the policy, they are going to influence it. They will not sit in state. Their task is to not have political power. Then what is their task? Task is to ensure that their interest is getting fulfilled. I have pressure groups in India, pressure groups of farmers. Their main task is to influence the policy making so that they get higher MSP, so that they get fertilizer subsidy. We have pressure groups of corporates. Their main task is to influence the policy so that the taxation is low, corporate taxes are low, so that the labor laws are not too stringent, so that they can easily earn money and they can do their business. So they have their own concerns. And we have discussed this in paper 1, how we have various pressure groups existing in India trying to influence this. So that's the fundamental difference between a pressure group and a political party. A pressure group may be attached to a political party. For example, BJP may have some pressure group which will help BJP. RSS is that pressure group which helps BJP. Okay. Similarly, you can have student pressure groups. So ABVP is associated with BJP. Similarly, you can have for Congress also, or you can have for any other party, not a problem. And they will basically try to influence people also about their position. And then once their party is in power, they will try to change the law also. Even if they are not in, even if their party is not in power, they'll try to push via protests, via propaganda, or via lobbying so that their interests are taken care of. तो प्रोटेस्ट करने पहुंच जाऊंगा, प्राइम टाइम पर आकर इंटरव्यू दूंगा बताते हुए कि किस तरीके से सरकार ने अगर ये पॉलिसी बना दी तो हमारा नुकसान हो जाएगा, अगर सरकार ने फार्म लॉज लगा दिए तो बहुत बड़ा नुकसान हो जाएगा. सो दैट वे I can say that there are certain means which will be adopted by these pressure groups. ठीक है, वो उसी तरीके से काम करेंगे. और जस्ट गिव मी अ मिनट, मैं थोड़ा सा तुम्हारे लिए कुछ नया निकालने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ. हाँ हाँ, सो वी कम बैक. तो अब I'll give you an example actually. When we talk about this Indian National Congress. So Indian National Congress started as a pressure group in 1885. Later on it became a political party. A pressure group can transform into a political party if it wants to. Okay. Otherwise, pressure groups, they will stay outside the framework of state. They will only pressurize the state. That is what pressure groups is all about. In doing so, they have their methods. I discussed with you methods: protests, lobbying, propaganda, sometimes adopting means like बंद्स, भारत बंद, देश बंद करो, स्टेट बंद करो, ये सब मेथड्स भी अडॉप्ट किए जाते हैं कई बार. सो sometimes these methods, they are within the framework of law, sometimes they go outside the framework of law also. Okay, so when they go outside the framework of law, we have a problem. But otherwise, they're very important. Now, if I take you to the theoretical part, and if I want to relate it, can I relate it to the elitist theory, in which one concept is that democracy is nothing but bargaining between pressure groups? If you remember, this viewpoint was given by Robert Dahl as a part of his polyarchy model. So if I look at things from that perspective, then pressure groups, they are very, very important. And they are rather integral to any democracy, because if you want to raise your voice, nobody is going to listen to you if you are a single person. But yes, even people will listen to you, and maybe state will also listen to you if you are in a group. Your bargaining capacity increases, your in general power increases. So we'll organize ourselves, at least in India, we organize ourselves around pressure groups. In the Western world, it is done. In single party countries, they don't allow pressure groups to function. Okay. So you will not see the role of pressure groups per se in China, North Korea, and yeah, that's it. That's the main idea with respect to pressure groups. Now, what I want to do is I want to tell you a classification of pressure groups as done by Gabriel Almond, and I want to compare this classification with the classification of Jean Blondel also. For that, what I'll do, I'll very quickly share a document, and via that document, I'll explain you. Just allow me a minute. Meanwhile, if you have any kinds of doubts, please feel free to ask me. I will be more than happy to address the doubt as of now. Till the time the document is reaching this board, I'll show you this classification, and then I'll add this document to your notes also before uploading. So प्रेशर ग्रुप्स एंड पार्टी सिस्टम्स को क्लासिफाई बहुत सारे लोगों ने किया है. हम सिर्फ मेजर मेजर चीजें पढ़ते हैं because that is more than sufficient for us from the examination perspective, but there are number of ways. So sometimes if you come across any other kind of material जिसमें ऐसा होता है तो घबराइएगा मत बिल्कुल भी, क्योंकि क्लासिफाई करने के तरीके बहुत हैं. But I am teaching you only those which are taught by the teachers in major universities in India. हम सिर्फ उन्हीं पे रिस्ट्रिक्ट कर लेते हैं अपने आप को, उससे हमारे सवाल सारे बन जाते हैं. So we don't have to worry on that front. Anyway, ये सब तुमको पता भी नहीं होगा अगर मैं नहीं बताऊंगा. मेरा काम है तुमको बताना, क्योंकि तुम में से कुछ लोग तो मेरी बात सुन लेते हैं, तो ये उनके लिए है जो बात सुन लेते हैं. ठीक है. Okay, so I have shifted the material. Now let me very quickly open it for you. Okay, as you can see here in this document, allow me one more minute. In this document, there is this classification. Okay, this classification has been done by somebody, and this is the way in which the pressure groups can be classified. There are 4 ways. This is Gabriel Almond's classification of pressure groups, in which, as you can see, the first is institutional pressure groups, the second is associational, the third is non-associational, and the fourth is anomic pressure group. What are institutional pressure groups? These are those pressure groups which are formed in various institutions. So those pressure groups which will be formed in, let's say, universities, or those pressure groups which are formed within the administration itself. For example, we have a civil servants association, or we have IS association, or we have IPS association, or we will also have the ex servicemen, ex military servicemen association. These are all associations which were formed within the administration and or within institution. The larger category is within institution. So whenever such kind of pressure group is formed, we call it institutional pressure group. Then we have something called as associational pressure group. Associational pressure group is based on some interest. For example, we'll try to understand with the help of an example. All India Trade Union Congress. Okay. Now, All India Trade Union Congress is a certain kind of a pressure group which is formed. And the basic idea behind this pressure group is that this pressure group will work for the cause of all the workers. So here there is a interest of a particular group. That group is workers. If I have a group of workers and they are fighting for their own rights, I'll call that pressure group as associational, because it is a group only of workers. Nobody else can come. Why? It is based on some interest. It is based on same interest. So all workers, they have the same interest that the government should create a law in which our wages should be increased, or the minimum wage should increase, or the working hours should come down, or there are more restrictions on our employer with respect to how he can use our services. So all workers would want that. So they'll come together and they'll try to make this happen. All India Trade Union Congress, this kind of a group, associational pressure group. Similarly, as I gave you earlier example, the example of FICCI और CII और ASSOCHAM, ये क्या करते हैं? यहाँ पर टाइपो है, C के बाद H भी आता है. They work for the interests of corporate entities. Students Federation of India works for the cause of students. Those students, they belong to a particular community. तो आप अपना अपना कम्युनिटी का भी बना सकते हो. तो इस तरीके से जब भी एक सेम इंटरेस्ट के लिए एक सेम ग्रुप आकर प्रेशर डालेगा, उसको एसोसिएशनल प्रेशर ग्रुप बोल देंगे. हाउएवर यहां पर कास्ट रिलीजन की कंसिडरेशन नहीं होती है. व्हाई? अ वर्कर कैन बी अ हिंदू, अ वर्कर कैन बी अ मुस्लिम, अ वर्कर कैन बी अ सिख आल्सो. Religious identity does not matter. Your identity as what work you do, on that basis you create. Okay. Then comes non-associational pressure groups. These as pressure groups, they are based on the consideration of caste or religion or community. So when we talk about Vishwa Hindu Parishad, RSS, Balmiki Samaj, Gujjar Mahasabha, Shromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, these are all examples of groups which are formed on the basis of caste or religion or community. They can also come, they can lobby, they can pressurize. It will be called as non-associational pressure group. And when we have some other people coming up and trying to put pressure, which cannot be classified in either the institutional, associational or non-associational, we collectively call them as anomic pressure group. This is the most loosely defined pressure group. यहाँ पर ऐसे कोई स्ट्रक्चर प्रॉपर नहीं होता. स्ट्रक्चर प्रॉपर मतलब यहाँ पर प्रॉपर स्ट्रक्चर है. देखो कि कॉर्पोरेट इंटरेस्ट वाले इकट्ठे आ जाते हैं. यहाँ पर प्रॉपर है कि अच्छा एक कास्ट वाले साथ आ जाते हैं, एक रिलीजन वाले साथ आ जाते हैं. यहाँ क्या है, हम एक इंस्टीट्यूशन में काम करते हैं तो साथ आ जाते हैं. यहाँ पर we don't have such kind of criterias. Anybody and everybody can come, and it is generally something which is not well institutionalized and it is not formal. तो बहुत ही इनफॉर्मल तरीके से लोग इकट्ठे हो गए, उसको एनोमिक प्रेशर ग्रुप बोल दिया जाता है. Generally these pressure groups, they don't abide by rules, there is lack of institutionalism, and these are spontaneous groups. तो ये हो भी सकता है कि कुछ समय के बाद खत्म भी हो जाए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, दिस इज नॉट गोइंग एनीवेयर. ऑल इंडिया ट्रेड यूनियन कांग्रेस इज नॉट गोइंग एनीवेयर. RSS, Valmiki Samaj are not going anywhere. Civil Services Association is not going anywhere. But they may exist for some period of time and they may finish. The best example for this is the India Against Corruption movement. इसको एनोमिक प्रेशर ग्रुप भी बोल दिया जाता है. India Against Corruption movement was the movement done under the leadership of Arvind Kejriwal, Prashant Bhushan, Anna Hazare, and they were fighting together. तो आई थिंक ये एग्जांपल मैंने पहले भी दिया था, मुझे एकदम से याद आ रहा है. एक और एग्जांपल है यहाँ मिजो नेशनल फ्रंट का. सो मिजो नेशनल फ्रंट पहले मिजोरम की लड़ाई के लिए खड़ा हुआ था. बाद में वो पॉलिटिकल पार्टी बन गई, आज की डेट में भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी है. बट स्टार्ट कैसे हुआ था? कुछ लोग आके मिजोरम के लिए डिमांड कर रहे थे एंड एक्टिविज्म कर रहे थे इन द प्रेजेंट डे मिजोरम. ओके, मिजो नेशनल फ्रंट, MNF, उसको भी एनोमिक की कैटेगरी में डाल दिया है. तो एनोमिक एंड सोशल मूवमेंट्स, इनको कई बार इंटरचेंजेबली भी यूज कर लिया जाता है. वी यूज द वर्ड इकोनॉमिक प्रेशर ग्रुप्स और सोशल मूवमेंट्स इन अ इंटरचेंजेबल मैनर आल्सो, नॉट वेरी वेल डिफाइंड टर्म, बट these are the four ways through which Gabriel Almond has classified all pressure groups: institutional, associational, non-associational, and anomic. Now, it's a very good classification, but because it allows us to understand कौन सा pressure group कहाँ पर है. Unfortunately, pressure groups जो हैं वो evolve भी करते हैं over a period of time. And no such thing is mentioned in this particular classification. तो इसके लिए एक और क्लासिफिकेशन यूज की जाती है, द क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ जीन ब्लॉन्डल. जीन ब्लॉन्डल ने कैसे क्लासिफाई किया है प्रेशर ग्रुप्स को? दो कैटेगरीज में, एक कम्युनिटी बेस्ड एंड दूसरे एसोसिएशनल. अब कम्युनिटी बेस्ड में उन्होंने कहा कि या तो कस्टमरी ग्रुप्स होते हैं. व्हाट आर दीज कस्टमरी ग्रुप्स? फॉर एग्जांपल, कास्ट ग्रुप आर कस्टमरी ग्रुप्स, एंड कास्ट के बेसिस पे प्रेशर ग्रुप बनेगा तो उसको वो बोलेंगे कस्टमरी ग्रुप है और वो कम्युनिटी के अंदर क्लासिफाई होगा. नाउ जीन ब्लॉन्डल इज सेइंग एज द कंट्री ग्रोज, जनरली क्या होता है, ये सब प्रेशर ग्रुप्स की इंपॉर्टेंस खत्म हो जाती है एंड ये वाले प्रेशर ग्रुप्स की इंपॉर्टेंस बढ़ जाती है. यू हैव टू रिलेट इट टू द मॉडर्नाइजेशन थ्योरी. द मोर मॉडर्नाइज्ड यू विल बिकम, the less your caste, religion, region will become, the less important will these factors be for you. मेरी कास्ट क्या है, मेरा रिलीजन क्या है, मैं कौन से एरिया से आता हूं, this importance is going to come down for you as we shift from a traditional society to a modern society. So the pressure groups are also going to change. यहां पर जब हम मॉडर्नाइज नहीं है तो कास्ट ग्रुप्स ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट होंगे, या आई बेग योर पार्डन, कस्टमरी ग्रुप्स ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट होंगे. मतलब कास्ट जैसे ग्रुप्स, RSS जैसे ग्रुप्स, ये ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट होंगे. द मोमेंट यू आर गेटिंग मॉडर्नाइज्ड, नाउ दूसरे टाइप के ग्रुप्स ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाएंगे विच आर इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन नेचर. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, सिविल सर्वेंट्स एसोसिएशन. दिस shows his classification is dynamic in the sense that he says you move from this pressure group to this pressure group with modernization in the state. Similarly, protective groups and promotional groups. Protective groups, they are protecting their interests. For example, trade unions. You remember where we classified trade unions there? We classified it in associational. He's saying you associate with each other because you have same interests. So you're worker, okay. Now you're working for the cause of your interests. So you are protecting your interest. Protective groups. But as you become more and more enlightened and as you grow more, you will not talk about only your interest, but you will talk about much broader interests. So the transition which is going to happen as you become more modernized is you move from protective groups to promotional groups. Promotional groups are focusing on broad interests. For example, human rights, protection of environment. When you start focusing on these matters, then the group which is formed is promoting a much broader set of interests, not the narrow interest which is only associated with you. So Jean Blondel is trying to tell us that community based groups, they will move from customary to institutional, and within the associational you will move from protective to promotional. Meaning, as you become more and more modernized, these groups are going to exist, and they will try to put more pressure on the state. But obviously we don't have those systems which are there in the Western world. So in case of India, you can appreciate how these groups, they are able to make more changes in the policy. Okay, 100 years back, these kinds of groups were more important, protective groups. They have retained some importance because bureaucracy, to last 200 years, bureaucracy has become very strong because the state is moving in a bureaucratic direction. So they are important. In countries like India, they are important. In countries of West, they are important. They are important. In some Western countries, which is largely the Scandinavian countries, they are focusing a lot on environment. So वो और ज्यादा आगे पहुंच चुके हैं. वहां पर ग्रुप्स ऐसे भी मिलते हैं, और वहां पर ग्रीन पॉलिटिक्स होती है, वहां पर environment related groups बहुत हैं. So that's how we look at things. Okay, so this is another classification. So we have two classification to understand the pressure groups across the world. Now the next discussion which we want to have is that हमने ये जान लिया है प्रेशर ग्रुप्स और पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के बीच का डिफरेंस क्या है. हमने प्रेशर ग्रुप्स को फर्दर क्लासिफाई कर लिया है दो तरीके से. प्रेशर ग्रुप्स के मेथड्स की बात मैंने तुमसे कर ली है. आई थिंक या दिस इज द थिंग व्हिच आई वांटेड टू डिस्कस विद यू. प्रेशर ग्रुप्स के टॉपिक में यही है. Let me very quickly see if there is something which is left in the topic of pressure groups. Classification done. Okay, yeah. ठीक है. Techniques adopted. Right. We've done the topic of pressure groups also. Done. Now, the next topic for us is the topic of social movements. How to look at social movements. Okay, don't worry, we'll do this tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll resume our discussion. Tomorrow we'll do social movements. Tomorrow we have to understand these electoral systems also. Okay, I'll tell you these electoral systems in which we have to do analysis of FPTP and the proportional representation system. What are the benefits? What are the issues with the systems? There are questions which are asked from this part also. So this part, social movements. Once we are done with this, then we'll move towards the globalization part. Okay, but the social movements part will take some time because there is some content here. There are some frameworks which we need to understand here. So it is going to take a little bit of time. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to finish this part, and then the globalization and the theory of IR part we'll be doing next week. Okay, so that's it. Let's meet tomorrow and we'll continue our discussion. Okay, thank you so much everyone.